The Thompson family moved into the old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, excited to start their new life. The house was a sprawling three-story structure with gabled roofs, towering windows, and a wraparound porch that creaked under the weight of time. To most people it seemed like the perfect home, spacious, with a large backyard, and just far enough from town to feel secluded but not isolated. For Sarah and Mark Thompson, along with their two children, Emily and Jake, it was everything they'd dreamed of. However, from the moment they crossed the threshold, something felt off. The air inside the house was cold, even though it was late summer. Shadows seemed to cling to the walls, growing longer and darker than they should, as if the house itself were trying to pull them in. The family shook off their unease, chalking it up to the stress of moving.
It just needs some time to feel like home,
Sarah reassured herself as she unpacked the kitchen. Mark, ever the skeptic, dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand. But it wasn't long before they realized something was very wrong. The next day, strange things began happening. In the kitchen, cabinet doors opened on their own. Sarah would close them, only to find them wide open minutes later. Objects seemed to move from where they had been placed. The lights flickered incessantly, and the air felt thick with tension, as if the house itself was watching.
Old houses do weird things. It's probably just drafts or faulty wiring. I'll have a look this weekend.
Mark, ever the skeptic, laughed it off. But Sarah wasn't so sure. She couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was watching them, lurking just beyond the edge of their vision. That night, it happened again. The footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed through the hallway. This time, Sarah wasn't the only one who heard them. Mark sat bolt upright in bed, his face pale.
Did you hear that?
He whispered. Sarah nodded, her heart racing. The footsteps stopped outside their door. The handle jiggled softly, as if someone on the other side was testing it, trying to get in. Mark leaped out of bed, yanked the door open, only to find the hallway empty.
Hello?
He called, his voice trembling slightly. No response. He walked the length of the hallway, checking each room. The children were asleep, undisturbed. There was no sign of anyone else in the house, but as he turned to go back to bed, he caught a glimpse of something, a shadow, darker than the rest, slipping out of view at the end of the hallway.
Did you see that?
Mark asked when he returned to the bedroom, his skepticism beginning to crack.
See what?
Sarah asked, her voice small.
I don't know. It was like a shadow, but it moved.
The days that followed were filled with more unsettling events.
I saw people standing at the end of my bed at night, watching me.
At first they were just shadowy figures, but soon, Emily described them in detail.
There was an old man with a long beard, a woman in a tattered dress, and a little girl holding a ragged doll.
One morning over breakfast, Emily spoke again.
They're sad. They miss their home.
Mark and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They didn't know how to explain it, but the occurrences were escalating. One evening, while watching TV, all the lights in the house went out at once.
Mom, what's happening?
It's okay, I'm getting my phone. Just stay close.
In the eerie glow of the screen, they saw them. Standing in the corner of the room, barely visible but undeniably there, were the shadowy figures. The air grew heavy with a sense of dread, and a low, guttural whisper filled the room. It was unintelligible, but the malevolence behind it was palpable. Mark scrambled to turn on a light, but nothing worked.
Come on, why isn't anything working?
The shadows crept closer, their forms becoming more defined. Sarah clutched the children, her heart pounding in her chest.
Stay close to me, kids. Don't move.
Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The lights flickered back on, and the shadows were gone. The family sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. The next day, Mark decided to do some research on the house. What he found chilled him to the bone.
Sarah, you need to see this. The previous owners, the Wilkins family, had lived in the house for decades. It was said that they were reclusive, rarely seen by neighbors. In 1925, something terrible happened. An unsolved tragedy. The entire family was found dead inside the house.
The official report stated that it was a murder-suicide, but locals whispered of darker things. Some said the house was cursed, that the Wilkinses had dabbled in dark rituals, inviting something evil into their home.
Could the spirits of the Wilkins family still be lingering in the house, unable to move on? Or worse, had they summoned something far more sinister that now threatens us?
That night, they made the decision to leave. They packed their bags, ready to abandon the house and all its horrors. But as they prepared to leave, the house fought back. The lights flickered violently, and the walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Doors slammed shut, trapping them inside.
Mark the doors, they won't open.
Keep trying, Sarah. We need to get out of here.
The air grew suffocatingly thick and the temperature plummeted. The whispers returned, louder and more frantic, echoing through the halls. The shadows appeared again, this time fully formed. The Wilkins family stood before them, gaunt, pale, and hollow-eyed. They reached out, their faces twisted in a grotesque plea.
Help us.
Their voices barely audible over the pounding of Sarah's heart. In a moment of clarity, Sarah realized the truth.
Mark, they're not the threat. They're victims, trapped here by something far darker.
Something that had taken hold of the house, feeding off the fear and despair of those who lived there. With a surge of courage, Sarah grabbed the children and ran for the front door. Mark followed, throwing his weight against the door until it burst open. They fled into the night, not stopping until they were far away from the cursed house.
Keep running, kids. Don't look back.
They never returned. The house still stands on the outskirts of town, its windows dark and its doors closed. But the whispers continue, and the shadows still move within, waiting,